When my parents threatened legal action unless I handed over my house to my sister, my attorney chuckled, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Growing up, the favoritism was unmistakable. Sophia always had the latest clothes, private tutors, and extravagant vacations. I, on the other hand, got sermons about self-reliance and effort. At 16, I was slinging fries at a rundown roadside diner while Sophia planned her summer adventure in Europe. When I raised the issue, my parents told me to understand their priorities. In other words, Sophia's future mattered more than mine. Initially, I wasn't resentful. I assumed that's just how families worked. Parents pour resources into the child they think will shine, while the other learns to survive on their own. So I did just that. I hustled through college, shared cramped apartments with roommates who dodged their share of the rent, and skipped nights out while others partied. Every paycheck, I tucked something away. I wasn't sure why I needed a fallback, only that no one would be there to catch me if I stumbled. After graduating, I faced a choice: settle for a dead-end job or take a risk. So, I poured my savings into a small auto repair shop. It wasn't fancy, and the first year was brutal. Long nights, endless hours, weekends spent covered in motor oil, but it paid off. By year 5, I was earning enough to seriously consider buying a home. My parents knew about my dream. I'd mentioned wanting to own a place instead of renting a tiny apartment, and each time, they'd smile and change the subject on why Mom would let out a heavy sigh. Sophia's been having such a hard time. Rent is so expensive these days. My dad would chime in. She just needs a little support. It would mean a lot if she had a stable place to live. They never said it directly, but the implication was clear. I was expected to solve Sophia's problems. Never mind that her struggles were self-inflicted. While I was grinding through 16-hour days, Sophia was living large, trips abroad, designer bags, and dinners at fancy restaurants. Yet somehow she was the one who needed help. Then there was the money. Over the years, I'd been helping my parents financially, covering home repairs, unexpected expenses, and even slipping them extra cash when things got tight. I didn't mind at first. They were my parents. But then I noticed small details, like my mom's new designer purse or my dad's shiny new watch. At first, I thought they'd just been saving up. Then it clicked. The money was going to Sophia. My parents weren't struggling. They were funneling my support straight into her lifestyle. Then I overheard a conversation that changed everything. I stopped by their house to drop off some items. I wasn't planning to stay, but as I passed the kitchen, I heard my name. So, like anyone would, I paused and pretended to scroll through my phone while listening. "I'm sure he'll do what's right," my mom said. "He's dependable. He's been saving for years," my dad agreed. "It's only logical. He can't expect her to struggle. He's her brother." Struggle? Sophia? The same Sophia who'd never paid rent and still had my parents covering her credit card bills? Something wasn't adding up. Then it hit me. They were talking about my money. My heart pounded as the truth sank in. They had a plan. I'd buy a house. Not for myself, but for Sophia. And the worst part? They assumed I'd just go along with it. As if it were my duty. As if it were obvious. I wanted to barge in and confront them, but I knew how it would play out. They'd call me selfish. They'd lecture me about family and duty, and how lucky I was to have succeeded while Sophia struggled. I'd heard it all before. I needed to clear my head, so I left without a word. That night, I lay awake in my small studio apartment, staring at the flickering ceiling light I hadn't gotten around to fixing. I thought about every time I'd been told to wait my turn, every sacrifice I'd made, every moment I'd bitten my tongue and smiled. And I thought about Sophia. Would she be embarrassed if she knew their plan? Grateful? Or would she just assume it was her right? I got my answer the next morning. Sophia called me out of the blue, her voice brimming with excitement. She rambled on about a place she'd found. "It's perfect," she gushed. 3 bedrooms, a backyard. I can finally move out. I waited for her to mention how she'd pay for it. But she didn't, because she didn't need to. In her mind, it was already settled. My parents had clearly assured her. She even had the nerve to say I could stay in the guest room if I ever needed a place. That was it. I was done playing their game. The next day, I did exactly what they expected. I bought a house, but not the one they wanted. I didn't tell anyone. No big reveal, no explanations. I picked a place I loved, put down my deposit, and signed the papers. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. The first thing in my life that truly belonged to me. I thought I'd have months, maybe a year, before my family found out. But life has a way of speeding things up. I was unpacking in my new kitchen, scraping off the tacky Dream Big decals left by the previous owner, when my phone blew up. Missed calls and texts from my mom, dad, Sophia, and even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Then I saw the message that made my stomach sink. Why did we hear from the realtor that you bought a house? I didn't know how they found out. Maybe the agent let something slip. Maybe Sophia had been eyeing the same listings. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I'd made my move, and the real fight was about to begin. The moment that text appeared, I knew my quiet housewarming phase was over. My phone kept buzzing. Calls and messages, some furious, some worried, all carrying the same undertone. Betrayal. I ignored them. Answering now would pull me into a trap where they'd twist everything to paint me as the villain. Instead, I focused on setting up my home. The previous owner had left hideous floral wallpaper in the living room, and that was going to be the most stressful thing I dealt with today. Then the doorbell rang. I knew who it was. I could feel it in my gut. When I opened the door, my parents looked less like family and more like corporate executives, ready to discuss my violation of some unspoken agreement. My mom's face was a blend of disappointment and hurt, the kind she used when I forgot to call home. My dad stood with his arms crossed, like he was preparing for a boardroom showdown. Before they could even step inside, I braced myself. The next 20 minutes were exactly as I'd predicted: accusations, guilt trips, and the classic "we're family" speech. My mom went on about how Sophia was devastated and didn't know where she'd live now. My dad made it clear they expected me to do the right thing. And my favorite line: after everything they'd done for me, this was how I repaid them. Everything they'd done for me? Like charging me rent as a teenager? Like making me pay for my own education while they funded Sophia's designer wardrobe? Like expecting me to work 2 jobs while she went on weekend spa retreats? If anything, I'd repaid them 100 times over. I could feel my patience fraying, but instead of losing it, I stayed quiet, nodded, and let them talk. I'd learned long ago that arguing was pointless. They weren't here to hear me out. They were here to push their agenda. Then came the ultimatum. My mom, with a voice dripping with forced calm, said I had 2 choices: give the house to Sophia or be cut off. I had to bite back a laugh. Cut off from what? Their conditional love? The same family that only supported me when it suited them? The same family that demanded twice as much as they ever gave? I told them I'd think about it. Not because I was considering it, but because I wanted them out of my house. They left looking smug, like they'd backed me into a corner. I took a deep breath, walked to my kitchen, and grabbed a beer from the fridge. I sat down and stared at my phone. More missed calls. Sophia had finally texted, and I could guess what it said. Something about me ruining her life, how she'd counted on me. I opened it, and what I saw made my blood freeze. Sophia had sent a message, but it wasn't meant for me. She'd accidentally sent it to our family group chat instead of whoever she was talking to. The text laid out a detailed plan for how she and my parents would pressure me until I caved and gave up the house. There it was, in black and white. Proof that this wasn't about fairness or family. It was a calculated scheme, and I was just the idiot expected to fold. I took a screenshot, saved it, and sat there for a moment. For the first time in years, I felt something new. Not anger or sadness. Clarity. They'd never seen me as family. I was just a tool to be used when convenient. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to justify myself. I was going to show them I was done. The next morning, I started my plan. I woke up with a strategy. If my family wanted a fight, they'd get one. But on my terms. I wasn't going to bicker or explain myself. I was going to take control and make it clear I was finished with their games. First, I locked everything down. I called my bank to ensure only I could access my accounts. I changed all my passwords, secured my important documents, and even installed security cameras around my house, just in case. Knowing my family, I wouldn't put it past them to try something drastic. Then I contacted a lawyer. I wasn't sure if my parents could cause legal trouble, but I wasn't taking risks. After explaining the situation, the lawyer assured me that as long as everything was in my name and I hadn't signed anything for Sophia, I was in the clear. That was a relief, but I wasn't letting my guard down. Later that day, I got a text from Sophia. She wanted to talk, but only if I was ready to make things right. I ignored it. A few hours later, another text came, this time from my mom. She was concerned about me and suggested a family dinner to sort things out. Yeah, right. I wasn't falling for that. Instead, I decided to flip the script. If my family thought they could pressure me, I'd give them a taste of their own medicine. First, I turned to social media. I posted a simple update, nothing dramatic, nothing directly about them. Just a photo of my new house with the caption, "Finally home. Earned this through hard work. It's all mine." The response was immediate. Friends and distant relatives congratulated me, saying I deserved it. Then the real show began. Sophia didn't comment, but I knew she saw it. A few hours later, I got another text. This time, she wasn't polite. She accused me of being selfish and humiliating her by publicizing my purchase. Apparently, some of her friends had asked why she wasn't buying a house if I could afford one. Her pride was bruised, and she wasn't happy. Then came the call. This time, it was my dia, no more pretending to care. No more "we're family" speeches. My dad was furious, accusing me of humiliating them and being ungrateful. I let him vent. When he finally demanded to know how I'd fix things, I replied simply, "I won't." That's when the threats started. If I didn't do the right thing, I'd be barred from their home forever. My response? That sounds like a deal. For the first time, I felt no guilt standing my ground. I didn't feel I owed them anything because I didn't. I blocked Sophia's number. I silenced my parents' calls. Then I ordered takeout from my favorite burger joint, cracked open a cold soda, and sat on my new deck, watching the sunset over my hard-earned property. For the first time ever, I felt truly free. The quiet didn't last. By morning, my inbox was flooded with messages. Sophia was in full meltdown mode. My parents were scrambling to do damage control. Apparently, some extended relatives saw my post and started asking questions. My parents didn't want anyone outside their inner circle knowing how messy things had gotten. I could almost picture their frantic discussions. My mom desperately trying to twist the story to save face. My dad grumbling about family loyalty and how I'd betrayed them. And Sophia? She went ballistic. Not only was she raging in the family group chat, but she was also airing her grievances on social media. I scrolled through her latest posts, long, dramatic rants about how tough her life was, how she'd been betrayed by those closest to her, and how she was struggling to find a place to live. I nearly spit out my coffee when I saw she'd started a crowdfunding campaign. That's right, a GoFundMe titled, "Help Sophia Find Her Dream Home." The nerve was almost impressive. The description was even better. She painted herself as the struggling sister whose heartless brother refused to help in her time of need. She conveniently skipped the part where she expected a free house without lifting a finger. The donations? A whopping $15, probably from one of her equally entitled friends. I was almost disappointed. If you're gonna pull a stunt like that, at least make it convincing. Still, this was getting absurd. I needed to shut it down before it escalated further. I didn't want to start an online family feud, but I wasn't about to let them drag my name through the mud. So I dropped my final move. I made another post, this time with evidence, screenshots of Sophia's text, where she openly admitted to plotting with my parents to pressure me into giving her my house. I added no commentary, just the screenshots and a caption, "Setting the record straight." The internet took care of the rest. Within hours, people started calling her out. Friends who'd blindly backed her went quiet. Some even turned on her, realizing they'd been misled. Sophia deleted her GoFundMe and locked her social media accounts. My parents were also feeling the pressure. Apparently, some relatives reached out, questioning why they thought it was okay to demand a house from their son while enabling their daughter. By the end of the day, the family group chat was dead silent. No more guilt-tripping texts or passive-aggressive voicemails. Just silence. And it was glorious. I leaned back, watching the sun dip below the horizon, my phone free of notifications. I held a cold drink, my favorite playlist humming softly in the background, and for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next crisis. I didn't care what my family thought or whether I'd done the right thing. I'd done right by myself, and that was enough. The quiet lasted a full week. No calls, no texts, nothing. I expected my parents to make one last desperate push, but for once, they seemed to realize I wasn't budging. Maybe the public embarrassment had finally sunk in, or maybe they were regrouping. Either way, I wasn't getting comfortable. Then, just as I was settling into my new routine, another surprise arrived. Certified mail. A thick envelope with my parents' return address, the kind that never brings good news. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee in one hand, letter opener in the other, ready for whatever nonsense was inside. It was a legal notice. My parents were threatening to sue me. I had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't imagining it. The claim stated I'd misled them into thinking I was buying the house for the family's benefit and that I'd unjustly enriched myself at their expense. It was ridiculous. I'd never promised anyone I'd give away my house, but their desperation had hit a new low. The best part? They demanded compensation for the emotional distress I'd caused Sophia. That's right. She was so upset about not getting a free house that they thought she deserved money. I did what any reasonable person would do. I laughed. Then I called my attorney. The call was brief. My lawyer could hardly contain his amusement as he explained that this lawsuit had no chance in court. At best, it was an intimidation tactic. At worst, it was a pathetic attempt to bully me into submission. Either way, I wasn't worried. But I wasn't letting it slide. If they wanted to escalate, I'd escalate right back. I made a few more calls. One to my bank to confirm everything was secure. Another to a locksmith to upgrade my home security. Then I did something I knew would drive them crazy. I sent a certified letter back, informing my parents that any further harassment would lead to legal action from me. 2 days later, the calls started again. First my mom, then my dad, then Sophia. I ignored them all. Some left apologetic voicemails. Others kept up the guilt trips. My mom's was the best. She went from tearful to furious in one message, demanding to know how I could abandon my family over something as trivial as a house. Trivial. The irony almost floored me. Why would they go to court over something so trivial? On the third day, I picked up when my dad called. He skipped the small talk and got to the point. They'd drop everything if I just worked something out with Sophia. I told him there was nothing to work out. That was the final straw. He exploded, ranting about how selfish I was, how I'd misled them, and how no son of his would treat his family like this. It was the same lecture I'd heard 100 times. But this time I felt nothing. I let him talk. When he finally ran out of steam, I said I had nothing more to say. I wished him well, hoped they'd move on, and hung up. And that was it. The legal threats fizzled out. The guilt trip stopped. My parents seemed to finally realize I wasn't giving in. Sophia went quiet. Either she accepted she wasn't getting anything from me, or she found someone else to latch onto. For the first time in my life, I felt free. No more manipulation. No more obligations. Just me, my house, and a future that was truly mine. I'd won. The first few weeks of freedom were strange. I spent so long bracing for the next round of manipulation that it felt odd to wake up without dreading a passive-aggressive text or another family ambush. My house started feeling like a home, not a fortress I had to defend. For the first time, I could focus on myself. I built a routine, waking up early, hitting the gym, cooking real meals instead of grabbing takeout on the go. I finally had time to enjoy the little things, like sitting on my deck with a coffee, watching the world wake up. It was the kind of calm I didn't know I needed. But peace never lasts long. One afternoon, while working from home, I heard a knock at the door. My gut told me who it was before I even looked. Sure enough, it was Sophia. She stood on my porch, looking less like the sister I grew up with and more like a salesperson desperate to close a deal. The entitled confidence was gone, replaced by a veneer of desperation. Almost, I didn't invite her in. Instead, I stood outside, arms crossed, waiting for whatever pitch she'd prepared. She started with awkward small talk, stiff and rehearsed, like she was reading from a bad script. Then came the real reason for her visit. She'd reflected and realized she'd been a bit unfair. She wasn't asking for a house anymore, just a place to stay for a while. I nearly laughed. A while, sure. And then what? I let her move in, and suddenly I'm covering her bills while she lounges on my couch, complaining about life's unfairness. No way. I kept my response short. Our parents had done more than enough for her. Why not stay with them? That's when the truth spilled out. She wasn't welcome there anymore. Apparently, our parents' reputation had taken a hit after everything went public. Relatives who'd once ignored their behavior were less forgiving. Even Sophia's friends had pulled away. Turns out, when you go viral for trying to scam your own brother, people don't want to associate with you. Sophia wasn't just looking for a place to crash. She was trying to escape the mess she'd made. I didn't bite. Told her I was done playing that role. No hard feelings, but I wasn't responsible for fixing her mistakes. The moment I said that, her mask slipped. The fake humility vanished, replaced by the same old resentment. She called me selfish, said families are supposed to help each other. I just shrugged. She stormed off, making a dramatic exit that might have worked when we were kids. But all I felt was relief. A few days later, I was at the mall picking up some things. While waiting in line at a coffee shop, I heard a familiar voice. Sophia was talking loudly to someone at a nearby table. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but her voice carried like a bullhorn. She was complaining about how hard life was now, how she had to get this work, an actual job, like a regular person. She griped about how stressful it was, how she couldn't believe people did this every day. The woman she was talking to looked like she was about to point out that most people have always done exactly that. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. It was too perfect. Instead of saying anything, I grabbed my coffee and walked past her table. She didn't even notice me, but as I stepped outside, I couldn't help but grin. For the first time, I wasn't dealing with Sophia's problems. Someone else was listening to her rant about life's injustices. And you know what? That was fine by me. Later that evening, I got a text from my mom. A final attempt to guilt me into reconsidering. Something about how families stick together, and she couldn't believe how distant I'd become. I ignored it. They'd spent years making it clear I wasn't truly part of their family unless I served their purposes. Now I finally understood something vital. I wasn't distant. I was done. And for the first time in my life, I felt no need to justify myself to anyone.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a twist. Stay tuned to Reddit Tales Times for your daily dose of drama, laughs, and unbelievable stories.